Thank you.
Give it a second, then we can kick it. All right, let's get it going. First of all, good afternoon, everybody. We are really happy to see quite a few of you joining us for part of this wonderful afternoon today with us. And listening to the topic of today's meetup session, which goes under the name of the BrainWare of a SaaS organization. Today's session is part of the broader VMware Bulgaria SaaS series. When we talk about the VMware Bulgaria SaaS series, probably most of you know VMware as a company that in the past delivered its products in an on-prem form factor. Now, VMware has gone through a transition and transformation in the last few years on its way to become a SaaS delivery first company. And hence these series are a good opportunity for those of us that have been part of that journey to be able to share some of the learnings and stories that we have encountered along the way of that transformation. Now, this is the first session of this series. We're pretty sure that you're going to enjoy it, but stay tuned for future instances and future topics as part of this series. Now, before we continue with the actual topic, let us first present ourselves, your hosts and speakers for today's session. And I will start first by presenting my all-time friend and colleague, Alex Dimitrov.
Hey, everyone.
Alex is a distinguished engineer with about 20 years of experience in the software industry. Quite a few of those spent with VMware. Currently, Alex is holding the title of an architect in the cloud management business unit, leading the development of multi-cloud management and automation solution product that is delivered both on-prem and in the cloud as a SaaS service. Alex, I'm really happy to have you here with me today. This great session.
Thank you. Good afternoon, everyone. Okay, thanks for the presentation. And this is Javor. Javor is holding the title of director in VMware in Carbon Black division. So Carbon Black actually is focused on building SaaS-based cybersecurity products which help VMware customers to secure their endpoints, their workloads, their applications, and whatever you can secure, they can secure it for you. So Javor is also an old-timer in VMware. He has a very roller coaster journey. He has been in management roles, in engineering roles, but the common thing among us is that we have both been part in developing products that were originally on-prem products that later on became destined to be a SaaS-based product. We have also been tasked to architect and design products as a SaaS offering from the ground up. And in my case, I have been also involved in transforming originally SaaS-based product to ship it and deliver it in on-prem. So yeah, pretty diverse experience.
Yeah, thank you for the intro, Alex. And talking about the session and the topics today. So, you know, the SaaS transformation is not only about an architectural, software architectural evolution. It is also require a certain brain shift, a certain change in the way we think about both common and daily tasks, as well as a little bit longer term and more strategic tasks. So our ideas today is to take a look at some of the core characteristics of a SaaS organization. What is the SaaS mindset needed in such organization? And also do that from various angles and different perspectives. They step in the shoes of the different stakeholders in that SaaS transformation journey and look through their eyes.
Yeah, and also we would like to kind of give us our kind of unique perspective and a little bit stay away from what is the by the book solution or something that is prescribed in the books, but our goal is to give you some interesting examples from our experience and also to kind of push you in the direction to think and to see what are the trade-offs and what actually can happen.
Yeah. Don't expect to provide solutions and a certain way of doing things. But there is a particular point that we would like to make out of our session. So listen carefully, enjoy it, and let's see if at the end we can discuss what that point is. Now, without further ado, let's kick it off with the actual topics. And in order to build a successful business, right? First of all, we need to very well understand our customers. Therefore, it's quite natural that we will start looking into those different perspectives of the SaaS transformation journey from the customer perspective. What does it mean for our customers for them to start employing a SaaS business model? How does it change? What does it change for them? What in their processes does change? And customers do employ a bunch of benefits, start using a SaaS business model. The first, and I would argue the most important one, and probably one of the most obvious ones, is that the SaaS business model does allow our customers to focus on their concrete business domain and concrete business value that they're providing for their customers. Right? Rather than spending quite a few resources for operating the software that is supporting their business, they can transfer this responsibility to us as a software provider and repurpose those resources for what they are good at, for what they exist, solving their business problems. Right? This allows them to reduce some of their capital expenditure, some of their operational expenditure. These also make their organizational structure leaner and more focused again towards the business problems they're solving. Right? All of this sounds really good, right? Unfortunately, there are some limitations and some challenges for some of our customers. There are certain industries, such as healthcare, such as banking, such as military or government organizations, where a certain level of control is required to be retained in the hands of the customers or in the hands of our customers that are building their businesses, right? Including certain level of control over the software they're using as a supporting tool for their business. And for some of our customers, it is an important consideration where, for example, the software that they're using, where it is being run, in which cloud. For some of our customers, it is an important consideration who is actually running that software, from what nationality, where those engineers are physically located. For some of our customers, it is really important considerations, what is the architecture that stands behind the multi-tenancy model of the software as a service product that they are consuming. Is it a hard multi-tenancy? Is it a soft isolation? What exactly? For some of our customers, it is a really important consideration to know where and how the data that they are providing using those software is being retained, right? And all of these considerations, our customers transfer to us as software providers through the means of certain non-functional requirements. For some of those non-functional requirements, we will talk a little bit later. Alex will look at those non-functional requirements from the perspective of the software engineering team that are developing those, and I will touch a little bit of them later on in the session. Right, so it is really important to know our customers. Another thing that our customers can take advantage of consuming SaaS services is that through the means of SaaS, they can retrieve constant value out of the products, right? As opposed to an on-prem product, which is we do release on regular basis, but quite, quite rarely, every 6 months or every year, through the means of SaaS, our customers, we can deliver to our customers constant value on, much more regular intervals. We can deliver new functionality every day if that does make a business case. And here is the tricky point. What does exactly providing value to our customers does mean? How often is often enough to provide new functionality to our customers? How often is
too often?
Too often, right? Look at this from with this example, right? We as end consumers of streaming services such as Netflix, such as Spotify, probably don't mind new functionality, new features. We obviously don't mind a new movie or a new album that we can listen to. And we don't need to prepare for consuming those new functionalities and those new features, right? It doesn't change, a new feature doesn't change the way we consume those services. Now, the other, opposite example, an extreme example is imagine a new feature, or even worse, a change in an existing feature in a software for the medical industry, in healthcare industry, right? A change of a button or the functionality of a button in a software that is being used by doctors that are, examining patients. I would argue that too often providing such functionality or changing existing functionality, I would argue that is actually value added for those customers because they need to prep for consuming those new functionalities. Probably they need to train the users, the doctors, for that new features, etc., etc. So the answers of the questions, what does value mean for our customers? How often is often enough and how often is too often? Actually, it depends. It depends on who our customers are. It depends on what environment and what industry they operate and what are their processes for consuming our services.
Yeah, that's why in the books, you can sometimes find, you should push your change immediately to production. You should push it once a month. It depends on your customers, on their needs.
Now, continuing our line about constant value delivery to our customers, let's take a look from a bit of different perspective, from the business perspective. How are the customers paying for SaaS services? They're paying through the so-called subscription business model. Now, subscription business model is not an equivalent to SaaS, right? I mean, you can have an on-prem product that is being paid for in a subscription business model. Actually, the subscription business model is not unique for the software industry. On the slide, you can see the brands of Costco and the FC Copenhagen Football Club. I mean, different industries are using the subscription business model as part of their marketing strategy, right? But in SaaS, the most common way that customers are paying for their products is the subscription business model. In essence, in an overly simplified way, the subscription business model says that the customers are paying smaller chunks of the total price of the product on regular intervals, whether that's every 3 months, every 6 months, a year, but smaller chunks of the total price, rather as compared to the on-prem business model where, or the regular marketing model where the entire price of the product is being paid upfront for a particular set of years in advance. And now that brings an interesting perspective, right? In a subscription business model, the reality is like this. As long as your customers are using the product and as long as you receive value out of those products, customers are continuing to pay for that. So now in the marketing funnel for SaaS products and then subscription business model, the focus changed a little bit from how do we attract new customers to how do we retain the existing customers and continue providing value for them month over month so they continue paying for that. Now there is also an additional twist on that, and interestingly, think about that. What gets measured gets improved. For us, knowing that if we provide constant value to our customers and if our customers are using our products, that would mean that we'll be successful, right? So we need to measure that. And there is another example of a set of non-functional requirements that we need to adopt in the architecture of our products. And those non-functional requirements is gather telemetry around how our products are being consumed, how our customers receive value out of them, right? And how much they are being used, because that's essential for our success.
Which part of the product also deliver value? Which are the most important functionalities there?
We said that we will be doing a bunch of double clicks, right? I mean, part of our session is to share some of our own examples and stories as part of our SaaS experience. And the first double click, the first example that I'm going to provide is something that both myself and Alex have experienced a few years back. In 2017, Amazon did spend $13 billion for acquiring this Whole Foods chain in the United States. Okay? And at that moment, I mean, although this sounded a bit strange, why Amazon is buying a grocery store, right? We didn't expect, or we didn't see that this will have anything to do with what our business is about and our product, but it actually did. And the interesting perspective was that we actually lost a couple of customers. Why? Those customers were actually competitors of Whole Foods. Now, our SaaS product that those customers were using was running in Amazon. So our customers were like 2 and 2, 4, right? I mean, you guys are using Amazon. Amazon is kind of our competitor right now. Our money goes to you, you pay Amazon. So that sounds like we are paying our competitors. So it was a strange situation. And, you know, those customers started reconsidering other SaaS products that are running in different clouds. Right? I mean, that's rather extreme example, but the point over here is think about the different macroeconomical and the different macro-political scenarios and what's happening in the world around us. How does this affect some of the functional and non-functional requirements towards our product? Think about it. Food for thought, like how does current political situation in the world and the war in Ukraine affect some of the decisions, some of the requirements towards the products that we are building? Again, food for thought. We can discuss at the end of the session. Fast switch of lanes. If knowing your customer is the first and the most important thing to build a successful business, then fast follow knowing well the team that you are part of, because you and the team are the ones that are actually going to build that successful business, right? So the second perspective that we are going to take a look at is the people management perspective in this SaaS transformation journey. For me as an engineering manager, working on SaaS products has brought an additional set of interesting topics during my one-on-one conversations with the engineers from the teams that I'm part of.
Well, for me, it also brought a new set of topics to discuss with my manager.
Yeah, you can look at that from both perspectives, right?
Let me hear your perspective.
So a topic that emerges quite often and regularly is the topic around our on-call shifts, right? We are part of a SaaS organization. We need to deliver our services to the customers with 24/7 SLA. So when something bad happens and the service is misbehaving or stop working, we need somebody on call to go and fix the issue. And my conversations with the engineers around these topics go something like that, right? How noisy is our on-call? How is this affecting our work-life balance? How is this affecting the stress levels of the engineers? Their ability, because of that stress level, to work on something else and be creative, do the rest of their duties and job, right? And there is an interesting twist in those conversations that happened also with COVID-19, because COVID-19 that did make us, all of us, much more self-aware about our health and well-being, much more aware about the well-being of our friends and family. So Now the conversations about being on call during the night or during the weekends, it became even more difficult, right? I mean, right, you need to take care of yourself first, and then comes work. And also, it's not only that, right? I mean, think about it. COVID-19 did shift a lot of us start working from home, and working from home did change our work schedule. Our work schedule is now much more fragmented, even more than before, right? Right now, I'm like working a few hours early in the morning, then probably bring kids to school and kindergarten, then some more work, then a couple of meetings in the afternoon, then probably I go out running late afternoon and then late evenings, right? Work in the late evenings. And now being on call is actually bringing another set of, constraints even during work days, during daytime, right? It's no longer, those conversations are no longer about a burden that happens only during night shifts or weekend shifts. Those are important considerations. Those are important talks to have from both perspectives, right? Yeah. From engineering perspective, from management perspective, have a discussion about that. Don't suffer in silence. I mean, it doesn't matter whether that's the first time you're doing on-call shifts or you're an experienced, right? People are changing and their perspective is changing. So those are important things, right? The worst thing that can happen is to figure out there was a problem with that when somebody leaves the company. And talking about somebody leaving the company, it's interesting. Now, when somebody leaves our team, the conversations are no longer just about, you're losing a colleague, a friend that it was interesting and good working with. Now you're losing somebody that was holding a bunch of on-call shifts, and now those on-call shifts needs to be redistributed among the team. So those are interesting perspectives. And have those conversations, right? Another thing that emerges as topics to discuss with my engineers is around the instant feedback that you can receive out of your work. Because it's SaaS product, right? I mean, you can immediately see the results of your work and how this is affecting the value that we are providing to our customers. It was much harder before to have those conversations when we're working on on-prem products because, the product is delivered once every 6 months, a year, and then consumed by the customer in a year, then probably, there was not such direct relationship between what you're doing and the value that you're providing to the customer. So interesting, shifts and nuances when you're working in a SaaS business model in terms of those interpersonal relationships and conversations. Really quickly about the HR perspective. And now, how are we growing the teams, the SaaS teams? I mean, is there anything different, right? I mean, think about it. Maybe the first thing that comes to mind is, when we hire new people to our SaaS teams, we'll be looking for people with SaaS background. It's quite natural, right? But that's easier said than done. First of all, it's not like 10 people, 10 engineers available and fighting for a single position. It's probably the other way around, 10 positions for a single engineer. And then also remember this, doing a SaaS organization can be done in multiple ways, the right way. So being successful in one SaaS organization does not necessarily mean that you are going to be successful and you are going to enjoy working in another SaaS organization that have totally different processes. So rather than looking for particular background, SaaS background, look for particular traits. Look for people that understand why the processes and the way you're doing SaaS can help them grow. Look for people that are interested in understanding how things work, why they break, and how they can provide value to customers. Look for people that they can see value, a new experience in your team. And there also remember, we said about a bunch of non-functional requirements, just a bit, and in certain cases, in certain companies and industries, it is important who the engineers are, what is their background, etc., etc. So there are implications from these perspectives, additional requirements towards the people you're looking and selecting, and there are a bunch of additional things that need to be put in the contract. So actually working in a SaaS organization made me much more aware about the different regulations on the labor market, et cetera, because even somebody going on call need to be part of the contracts, and you need to be aware what are the limitations of the corresponding country in that perspective. So doing another double click, quickly, here is a true story. Like a couple of years ago when we were building one of the first teams over here in Carbon Black's SaaS team, we were hiring. There was this great candidate that passed all the technical interviews, management interviews, etc. Great personality, absolutely great technical skills. But this candidate had valid, and I mean really valid reasons that they couldn't join our on-call schedule for the first year, year and a half, 2 years, right? On the other hand, I mean, it was a rare find on the labor market and unique skill sets. But what do you do now? I mean, how would the rest of the team feel? It's not like we are going to make our on-call shifts worse, but I mean, it's an exception. Why everybody else is doing an on-call and then this candidate, this team member will not in the future. What do you do? Hire or no hire? I'll tell you, think about that, and during the discussion point, I can tell you what was, the development in our concrete situation. And then, last but not least, SaaS has a lot of implications in the way we design and organize our teams in so many ways, but now, let me continue that line that I somehow started with regards of on-call shifts and on-call duties. Not that on-call is the most important thing about interpersonal relationships and, people management perspective in a SaaS team, but it is one of the biggest changes that you can, feel moving from an on-prem product to a SaaS product. So it's an interesting perspective to, to go along the line and talk about that. So, right, when you are a SaaS service, a SaaS company, you need to design your organization in a way that you can support your customers 24/7. Right? We already touched that topic a while ago. And there are at least 3 primary ways how you can achieve that in terms of organizational designing, and a number of different nuances of those 3, right? 3 ways. And let me, start with saying there are no rights or wrongs how this can be done. There are a lot of it depends, right? So the first one is like you give the freedom of your development engineering teams to go fast and focus on developing functionality and features, and then you have a separate support organization that is, taking care of the on-call shifts and the 24/7 support. And in certain cases, although this is unorthodox kind of way of doing things, not in the books, certainly not in Google Books, right? In some cases, this is a valid scenario, right? I mean, it depends what the customer expectation is, and this allows your team to go fast and build features, etc., right? You focus your development team on what they are best at, providing new features, new functionality to your product. Then on the other hand, there is no much skin in the game, right? And the people that are supporting those services, they don't have the internals of those services, and how good is their reaction to incidents, right? I mean, if they don't know how exactly those services work. You can do transfer of information, etc., but it's not the same as when the engineers that have built the product are supporting it.
Direct feedback loop.
Also, you look at the direct feedback loop, you lose some of the interaction between your engineers and the customers, but there are benefits. And then going to the other extreme, of course, is like what's in most books, you build it, you run it mindset. And then whoever builds a service is the one that supports it 24/7. And there are a lot of benefits, a lot of skin in the game over there, fast reaction to incidents because people do understand what's going on because they have built it, etc. But then reality is that takes a lot of the cycles of those engineering teams.
It has a price.
It has a price that you pay. And there is always, as always in the life, there is something in between, in the middle, and a lot of nuances in between those two extremes. Those something in the middle I call share the load, follow the sun model, where multiple teams, each of them owning a set of services, right, and can share the load of supporting those services, although, you know, not knowing each and every service to the details, but knowing enough so they can support those services. And this model, especially if the two teams are on the two extreme ends of the world, like in Bulgaria, in the States, for example, they can also do the follow the sun model, covering 12-hour shifts, etc., etc. So there are a lot of benefits and also that many negatives in this model. Basically, it's gaining some of the benefits and the negatives from the other two models as well. And to finish off my part, I'll do another double click exactly about that. What we have implemented within one of our teams over here is the so-called sister model team, and that sistership model of team organization is not only with regards, supporting the services, but it's a general model for how we operate. Basically, the sistership model of teams is like you have a couple of teams that are identical twins, if possible, as in our case, one in Bulgaria, one in the States, similar structure, similar seniority, basically twin teams on two different geographies. We have them share a common product backlog, but each and every team has primary responsibility for a subset of the services that we are building and supporting, and then a secondary ownership of those services is on the other end of the geography. We like to call those teams loosely coupled, strongly coherent. We have some common meetings, like common grooming of the backlog, but then we do individual plannings because we try to divide and conquer. Each team is focused on particular functionality that is on the roadmap to be developed end to end, right? But then we share the load once this functionality is delivered to the customers of supporting it to a certain level of transfer of information. This model has worked quite well for us, but it does require certain level of, looking in the same direction from the leaderships of both teams, right? I, as a manager of one team over here, and my colleague in the other end of the world, we need to look in the same direction in order for our both teams to be able to work really well together. Look from, high level above, we are considered a single team, and that's why the sister team model. Now, where we started with the customer perspective, and in this customer perspective, I touched a lot of non-functional requirements that come from some of the considerations that those customers have towards us. So Alex, tell us a little bit more on the other perspective, the perspective of the engineering teams, how those non-functional requirements do work.
Yeah, how those requirements actually translate into something that the customers can actually use. Okay, so I'll start with one quote. You can read it, that actually becomes one of my favorite quotes recently, because I see it almost everywhere. It's not just in the work aspect of my life, but actually everywhere. So what I want to start and to keep in your minds for the rest of the couple of slides is to think about the trade-offs, because in each decision that we take, there are always trade-offs. And if we don't understand what are the trade-offs, then we do just basically random decision. And also why the engineering perspective is important. It's because it's important because in the SaaS product, a lot of functions that were traditionally spread around, let's say, a product management team, or in a traditionally a QA team, or in an ops team that supports the running of an application, or even a support organization that troubleshoots the issues. Now all those requirements and tasks are given to the engineers, all at the same time. So it is really important for the engineer to think, to be open-minded, and to see things from different aspects. in order to do a quality job. So let's drill down. There are a couple of aspects of it's both a SaaS product and it can be an on-prem product, but let's see what are the mind shifts when we consider them one by one. I'll start with the deployment first, because from the different deployment models, what's a SaaS product? It's a product that is deployed somewhere in the cloud and the consumers consume it through internet, usually as a website. So from this aspect, this deployment model come a lot of different implications. One of it is, as Yavor mentioned a little bit earlier, how often we deploy new functionalities. This was very important about what functionality goes into the product when you deliver an on-prem product. Usually you gather a couple of functionalities that you think are the most important. You decide how much time it will take. You build a new product version, including all the developed functionalities. You ship it and you start again. Now it's a little bit different. You may decide to ship every week, but rarely there is a functionality that is done in a week. Rome wasn't built in a day, right? So we need a way to decouple the delivering of functionality to our deployment schedule. And some of you may, I want to move the discussion into this direction.
Just click and make it.
Okay. I want to talk a little bit about something very simple from when you see it from the surface, the feature toggles. But actually this can become quite complex and it's quite important. This is a very simple technique that allows you or allows the engineers to actually deliver constantly their work on a specific feature, but then as a separate concern, someone else or the dev team or the PM team or the market or the marketing can decide when this functionality is actually enabled for the customers. And okay, usually you start, there is a very simple Boolean feature toggle, which could be on-off a Java system property. But then it becomes a little bit more complex. Okay, I want to flip this toggle, but I don't want my service to restart. Okay, so let's make a simple service that provides just, you can create a feature toggle, you can read it. Then it's another step further. Okay, I want my feature toggle to be not just on-off. I want it to contain something more complex, like configuration. Then there is a real example. We were doing a rebranding of our product, and in certain places, there is a pages in the UI that needs to check a certain feature toggle, whether the new branding is enabled, and change some labels. But those pages, because our feature toggle service required an authenticated access, those pages were still, the user is not authenticated and they don't have any system credentials, whatever. So we needed to expand our feature toggle service to include this notion of public feature toggle that can be read by anyone. Then another very real example, our product had this requirement for different license editions, an enterprise, an advanced, a standard, etc., etc. And we built the whole notion of a licensing on top of feature toggle and a controller that actually makes sure that they're set according to what the license is.
And then I come and I'm like, I want this feature toggle on for certain customers and off for another set of customers. And then there is in between something.
Yeah, then our feature toggle service needs to be tenant aware. So you touch the multi-tenancy aspect. So it really sounds very simple at the surface, but when you drill down and when you consider all the use cases, and then there are use cases you want at some point to retire some of the feature toggles. Otherwise, the complexity of the code and the testing matrix explodes. So you need to have also this in mind. So this simple requirement to decouple the development of a feature to the actual enablement of the feature requires really a mind and a brain shift to be able to be successful. And some extremes, when you start like needing a team to prepare a wiki page describing all the feature toggles that control the behavior, of a certain feature, and also your feature toggles the values become regular expressions. That is, I mean, you need to think whether you have pushed this too far.
Yeah.
But this is just one example. So let me go to the next topic, which is about scalability. So, of course, when you open your product for the whole internet, basically, and if you have a really good product, really good marketing, and really good time to market moment, then suddenly you can have a lot of customers wanting to try or play with your product, like ChatGPT, and it's down. So you need to think about the scalability. I'm not saying that for on-prem product you should not think, but there are some specifics, and I'll give some examples. So one of the example is that when you go to the SaaS model and you do everything by the book, you do microservices, you do Kubernetes, you do pods, everything is stateless, you can spin off number of pods, etc., etc. And it becomes very easy to scale, let's say horizontal or even vertical. It's very easy, so you can abuse this. So you can go very long down the line with some major performance bottlenecks in your application and in your product just by paying more for Amazon to run your service. But at some point, I think you have this example, it becomes a business no-go to scale in such a manner. And you need to go back and fix your actual.
Really quick example, yeah. We were on an incident. Basically, there is a bottleneck in one of the services. We needed to scale up. I was like double the number of instances over there, and we double it, and then the problem is gone like for 5 minutes. When then we have another incident, another internal alarm, which is saying, well, your cost per endpoint did increase too much, so now you're irrelevant on the market. Go figure out and fix it, right? What's going on? So, you know, scalability in the cloud in a SaaS model is really easy, but it has its price. And yeah. you know, in order to be relevant on the market, your product needs to be well priced. And then where is this fine line, right?
Yeah, but again, it depends. Sometimes it's much more easy rather than spend 6 months on engineering targeted effort to fix a bottleneck or to identify and fix a lot of bad bottlenecks, to just pay a little bit more, but sometimes it's not an option. Yeah. Another very interesting example is when I was working on both single product, but it's both deployed as a SaaS offering and also as an on-prem offering. And when you're in on-prem and you're constrained by a VM that has certain amount of memory and certain amount of vCPUs, let's say, then and you put it under load, or even worse, your customers put it under load before you put it under load. Then you really discover bottlenecks that in the cloud, because the persistence is very scalable, you have put a lot of memory on those pods, and you really don't see, or you don't have a lot of performance done on the SaaS offering, and you just haven't seen those bottlenecks. And now you discover them in on-prem. So it's really useful to think about the scalability when you're going SaaS. Okay, next topic. Next topic is one of my favorites. It's the maintenance, and by maintenance, I mean all the upgrades, all the emergency security fixes that you need to provide, etc., when you're doing a SaaS product. So I'm, again, not saying that this is not important when you ship an on-prem product, but just the magnitude of the implications that you can have in the SaaS world is much bigger. So, for example, if you have some security vulnerabilities in an on-prem product, you can sometimes rely that, okay, it is an isolated environment, there is no access from the internet to it, it's only available for trusted company employees, etc., etc. So sometimes you can hide behind this additional layer of security and protection. But when you're SaaS, you're very much more open to attacks. And I'll give some examples about the maintenance and upgrades. First is as we touched many times so far, you update much more frequently. So you need to think carefully how much you want to automate. So because I mean, if you deploy once in a year, probably you can do it manually with a lot of manual steps. If you do it like every 2 weeks and you do it on let's say different regions, 10 regions, it's much more practical to automate a lot of it. Also, don't forget really those emergency security fixes and patches. Probably a lot of you remember the Log4j vulnerability, etc., should be fixed in a day or something like that. So you need some very quick mechanism to update your SaaS offering. At the same time, I think you need a very well thought guardrails or procedure what goes through this shortcut, because otherwise you can end up pushing all of your changes through this because everything is important, you know. So yeah, be mindful. There is really, it depends on the situation. Also something very quickly to mention about the upgrades in the on-prem product, because for geopolitical reasons, you don't know when your beautiful SaaS product will need to be converted and shipped as an on-prem product. So what we have found out in our experience is that one of the most important aspects for customers when they upgrade an on-prem product is the predictability. Basically, they don't care so much if it is 1 hour or 2 hour maintenance window, but they want to be sure that, okay, if something is wrong in 1.5 hours, in the next half hour, I can revert to the old working state and it will work. And I don't need to extend my maintenance window to affect other teams that rely on this software, etc. So just be mindful about the upgrades, about the security, emergency fixes, etc. Okay, security fixes. What about security? So we touched a little bit about the security. Some additional points that I want to make is that for SaaS, usually you need to do a lot of your homework upfront. For example, in the SaaS, especially, not that it's not true for the on-prem, but especially, you need to, you rely not only on your own code that you produce, but you rely on a lot of external dependency, third-party libraries, tools, etc., etc. So what we have found mandatory to do in our daily job is to have a code scan that scans all our things that we ship as part of our Docker images, etc., for vulnerabilities, static coding, code analysis, and also our dependencies. And initially, it's hard. Okay, I have 10 security vulnerabilities that are must fix in various libraries. How do I fix them, etc.? I need to bump this library, but this breaks this, etc. Initially, it's a pain, but after a couple of iterations, this process can become very smooth. So just don't forget about this aspect. Another thing about security that is also, it's a cross-cutting concern. It touches the customer perspective, the engineering perspective, is how you secure and how you store your data. What you put also in your logs. Is there a sensitive data in your logs? Because usually logs are then managed by some external system. You might not have complete control who can look into this system, etc. It's not cool to show the passwords of your customers in your logs. Extreme example.
Not cool, at least to say.
Cool, at least, yeah. You may end up in jail. An advanced area around security is if you want your product to sell to certain government agencies, etc. There are a bunch of certifications like FedRAMP, etc. that, I mean, you need to know your customers and to be prepared to go through all of those because they are not that easy. I've already touched a little bit about multi-tenancy, whether it is soft, hard, whether you share some of the data or you have some very hard isolation. in this regard. Oh, what I want you to think about is, again, around the isolation of the data. Consider you have two tenants. One is the classical example, one is Coke, one is Pepsi. You don't want, let's say your software is processing their financial results or consumption results for or marketing campaign results, etc., etc. You don't want to leak this data to the competitor. I mean, you need to very carefully engineer your SaaS solution for multi-tenancy aspect. And multi-tenancy, I can really say, is more or less very specific to a SaaS product. So because more or less every SaaS product, it is not usually, in 99% of the case, it's not designed to be used by a single customer. You write it once, but you prepare to be able to sell it to a lot of customers. And sometimes it's not just about protecting the data. So for protecting the data, you can do a lot of engineering practices. You can start with putting the tenant in, let's say, the token that you issue. Then it flows through the, let's say, thread local context. It can go to the data access layer. And then you can somehow guard that each query you do to your persistence layer, consider this organization ID or whatever. So there are techniques to do that. But suppose another aspect, which is a kind of a bridge between multi-tenancy and scalability. You can have a very noisy neighbor problem. You can have a customer that uses your software a lot, and this actually can prevent your other customers to get the value of your product or responses in a timely manner. So for one specific example, you may have a rate limiter that if it is not tenant aware, it can be consumed by one of the tenants, and then nothing is left for the other one. So also consider the third-party libraries and supporting software around your software that you're using, whether they match your multi-tenancy model or if there are any problems, because later on it's much more difficult to solve them. The next aspect, that is
just a quick time check, about 5 minutes.
5 minutes. Okay, I can do that. The next aspect is about integrations, because usually in a SaaS world, it's very easy for products to integrate, and that's actually one of the major benefits, to integrate with other SaaS products. It's very easy, but some, again, things to think about. So it's very easy in the SaaS world, but consider if you need at some point to bring your beautiful SaaS creation in on-prem, then all those integrations with SaaS products might be gone. I have one example with the one.
Sounds like you have experienced that pain.
I have one example with it's called CSP component, which does the authentication and authorization part, and it's SaaS only. And when we needed to ship our product on-prem, we basically needed to rewrite.
CSP stands for Cloud Services Provider, so it's
it's
SaaS, right?
SaaS.
It's in the cloud.
And we needed to re-implement a lightweight CSP for our on-prem, which looking from the time perspective, it took usually a team of 3-4 engineers full time to support the functionality that appears in CSP, and we need to adapt it and bring it on-prem. So be careful with the integrations, and also be open to be consumed as an integration of other SaaS products. That's very powerful. And the last topic we already touched, it's around the telemetry, because it's for the SaaS, you control the environment, so it's very easy to collect data. You own the environment, and usually the question is what to collect. And by the book this time, the usual things is that you are interested in the user activity, which part of the products the user goes most often. You are interested usually in the performance data, where are the bottlenecks, how many interactions per second, per minute, per hour, how many tasks you can accomplish. Usually you're interested in error messages in the logs. Usually you're interested in a customer feedback. So it's good to collect this data. There are a lot of third-party solutions that help with that. So just do your own research and consider this. Done.
Good. So at the beginning of the session that we said that we are not going to provide solutions, right? We are not going to tell you, this session is not about, this is how SaaS should be done, right? It's more about raising some questions, making you think about, giving some examples. The reality is, at least what we have come across as a conclusion is, a lot of the times, the answers of the questions that you're asking yourself how to do something, and that's valid also for on-prem products, but to a certain degree, more exaggerated in the SaaS world, it does depend, right? I mean, there is no right or wrong. Most of the times, there is no right or wrong call. Let me put it this way: there are multiple right ways to do.
Yeah, or there is a right way for someone that is a wrong way for someone else.
Yeah. So SaaS is a different game, right? I mean, it's to a certain degree. But what you should take away from it, I mean, it's not rocket science. It's not like it's totally different than the problems that you are facing in an on-prem product, but there are different perspectives. There are different set of questions that you need to ask yourself and look for solutions.
Yeah, and, I mean, don't push blindly because you have read something in a book. Evaluate, be open-minded. Maybe this particular advice is applicable in a certain context and you're in a different context. So measure, evaluate, and if needed, adjust.
Yeah.
Thank you guys very much. Let's we have a couple of minutes, but let's save those for questions. I'm dropping some useful links in the chat, and to everyone, thank you very much for your time. And please spare a couple of minutes of your time to fill in the survey that you're going to receive after the meeting. Your opinion matters. We want to keep improving, and we're doing it for you after all. So let's hear it, what you have to say.
All right, great. We are open for questions. Don't be shy. I left a couple of questions open-ended during my part of the session, like the hire, no hire dilemma. I wonder, what would you do, guys? Or, have you experienced something similar? Or I would like to hear thoughts. I mean, does the current macroeconomic or macro-political situations, does it affect in some way, one way or another, the architecture and the functional, non-functional requirements towards your products? Give us some thoughts, ask questions.
Especially if you disagree with some of our points, we would like to hear.
People will be shy. Alex, you didn't know about, so that's not something that we can practice. Alex, you didn't know about that example with the hire, no hire situation, although we discussed theoretically. So what would you do?
Well, you better hire. I mean, because you don't know what will change in 6 months, but the quality engineer is a quality engineer.
What if that would implicate the morale of the team, right? I mean, you end up with somebody that...
When you have good manager, a good manager can describe the situation to the team and they will...
So I'll tell you what we did, right? I mean, we had an honest conversation with the team. As a team, we discussed that the capabilities that person brings to the team are offsetting the fact that they will not be able to join and help with our own call sheets, right? And we did an offer, but then the candidate refused the offer, and they didn't refuse it because they didn't like the offer. I mean, it was a good offer for them and actually better than what they had, but they felt that they will feel awkward. They will feel as a, something extraordinary as part of that team, and to a certain degree, they wouldn't feel a complete part of the team. So that was strange, right? I mean, we were looking so much from our perspective, but then at the end, the person decided not to join us, and that was, gave me a lot of thought about that.
When you have people in the picture, it's
Yeah.
always interesting, and
Yeah.
you never know.
I saw a few comments over there. Thanks for those comments. Any questions? All right. I guess.
Well, if not, thanks for your time, and hopefully you get something from this presentation.
Yeah. Thank you, folks. Thank you for staying with us.
Bye-bye.
Thank you, guys.